request I will do for one request I'll do for all the participants though is that if they could add, just like Gagan and I have written -Accel -India Quotient, because I'm just very curious. When I joined VC industry 12 years ago, there were just handful of us. Like we will, if we went for a VC get together, we'll meet everybody and we'll know all the people by name. Now there are so many smart people and young people in that when I reach, I feel very old and I don't even know half of them. So I'll just request folks if they can.
In fact, it's a good suggestion. All of you should have a standard style of writing your name and your firm name because हमको तो इतने सारे calls करने होते हैं, right? Actually, a lot of people say. I think it is good to have.
Yeah. Shruti, I still can't share my screen. It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Should work now.
Okay, let me check. Yeah, now it's working. Okay. So there is my...
We can see Equanimity 314 first check. Dexter.
It's good to know that people are curious, right? Who are all our co-conspirators to invest in GenAI. It's good to know, and I'm very glad to see so much interest, right? Okay, all right. So I think people might have got a little might have run away simply because we called it AI infra, and I was still thinking वैशाख को last बोलने का कि GenAI stack tech stack बोल देते तो शायद ज़्यादा लोग हो जाएंगे. It talks about marketing, right? So and last few presentations which I saw, almost every presentation, the question which is being asked, and I think Sahil was the best one: what is your framework? What is your framework of investing? What is your framework of thinking? And so this is a slight joke on that. The reason I'm saying to all of you is you guys are starting off on your journey of investing. I think there are no frameworks. All of us invest so early that most investments are made by exception, not because it fits a framework. So I think it's better to ask questions, better to think about, deeply why you want to invest. Just keep on asking one question after the other. That's just broadly that. Just a small joke. Now, I like to throw in a lot of jokes through my slides, and I apologize for that. So you have to bear with me. This is a friendly VC group with entrepreneurs. We can't joke that much. They think, what is this VC doing? They want us to be very serious. But essentially, Calvin Hobbes, big fan. I think the slight change I'll do to this thing about maths is that I think going forward, when you grow up, you need to know how to use AI. For the longest period of time, I was after my son, like any other VC, you should learn coding, should learn Python. He's 10 years old. Abhi se sikhate hain, by 15, I'll have his startup up and running, Thiel fellowship, everything sorted out. And then he was not at all interested. He's like, let me play, let me swim, and I think today, most of us don't need to learn programming. Most of us just need to be very good at speaking English and prompting. I think so that works. So, okay, so what's the content today? Quickly, a quick framework. We're going to talk about some framework, which is my framework about how I look at AI. What is GenAI tech stack? Why is it interesting? Is it worthwhile to investing in this space? Can we predict the future really? And how do we evaluate opportunities? And I think I might have messed up the slide. So order of the slides a little bit, but so quickly, since this is a short time. So the way I think of the AI space, and this is on which we have set up the Atoms AI cohort also, you can broadly divide the whole space into three parts. You have AI users, people who are going to create SaaS and consumer applications, who are going to use AI. They're not going to create AI, but they're going to create much better experiences using AI, right? So they're consumer designers, product designers, they're SaaS folks who understand the user pain very well, and then they can look at a piece of AI and say, hey, if I was given this, I could use it this way and it will solve my users' needs so well. On the extreme right, you have AI builders. These are the foundational AI researchers, the ones who are building models, the ones who are doing a lot of research, PhDs typically, or researchers from large corporates like Facebook, Meta, Google, all of those who have been working on ML for quite some time. And they're building these models which you are fundamentally using, your Llama 2, your GPT, all of those, right? So, and in the middle, you have these AI enablers, which is the middleware. So product and engineering teams in AI users want to use AI, and they will need some tools to use it. And that's where the tools for using AI come in the middle. And this talk fundamentally is about this middle bucket, right? Now, the interesting thing to note, though, is that the most fundamental concept, if there is no demand by the AI users, then the right things segments don't really exist. So you have to first be very comfortable with saying, yes, I believe AI is going to permeate everything. That's a fundamental core construct on which then the other two can exist, right? So that's the key thing, right? And so there are a lot of questions which inside my firm, when I meet some investors, people see fund, and I even tell some of our LPs, right? Yes, GenAI, we are investing. I am very excited about it. I think it's amazing. But India continues to be a roti kapda makan economy, right? Just because it is hot today to invest in AI does not mean we take away our eye from the ball of, hey, e-commerce or direct to consumer brands or fintech or lending. Those are day-to-day needs of our customers, of Indians, and that continues to be. And so you have to temper all of this enthusiasm around Gen AI with some of the questions I keep hearing, like, is it real or is it another fad? Is everything a topper on top of GPT, right? So most of us, when we meet startups, the first thing we ask, are you using GPT? And then yes, and then like, okay, so then somebody else will also make it, right? And there's obviously, for some of us who have been around, like, is there a very large ML company which has come out of AI from India? At least not yet, but in US, of course. So that's why did you blink? Like, there have been a lot of companies that have come out which have done well, and there, for us as Indian investors, are there any companies to invest in India? How do they compete globally? And everything is expensive to invest. So does it even make sense to invest, right? So and then finally, how do we know what is good, what is bad, right? So there's a lot of questions when you are starting to invest in this space. But fundamentally, I already discussed this. If you don't believe in this, that lots of applications are going to be created, then we can just stop. You can actually drop out of this webinar, and your life would go on as if nothing has changed. So it's fine. It's perfectly fine. Okay, now getting to slightly little technical. I kept the talk not very technical. This is how a typical modern stack of one of our startups would look like when they start off, right? So they are going to use they will have Flutter for clients. There's already a lot of technology which they're using to build products, right? And then I show this because then you have to add AI to this. So AI is an add-on, essentially, which is getting added on top of this today, right? So that's the way it goes. And by the way, I'll share the slides with you guys, so you don't have to take screenshots or something like that if you want. But since we are adding AI, please understand AI ML has been around for quite some time. I myself ignored AI ML for quite some time. Like, so if it was just too technical. It was a bit boring, right? You go and look at just talking about models, and you're trying to talk about more statistics, and it was not fun for me, at least. That's why I have not looked at it very seriously. I've tried coding in PyTorch in the past, and it just like, hey, it's not fun. What's the end use? What's the end app? It's not exciting enough. But this stack has been there for some time, right? So the last 6-7 years or even more, and this stack has started. There were a lot of products which exist today, right? So the big question you can ask is, all these ML stack incumbents, why won't they go and win in the GenAI race as well? Right. And that's where I'll try to answer some questions here, right? So this exists, and just for all of you, like, if you want to read, there's a lot of, wherever I have reference articles, you can go and read. Most of the articles are built on top of, most of this deck is built on top of smart people, smarter than me, and obviously experts. So traditional ML and Gen AI, there is this whole pipeline difference which has happened, right? Essentially, you start off with data, but in traditional ML, you essentially do feature engineering. So the way to think about it is that you have a tabular data set, and then you're trying to figure out, okay, let's say customer orders. So this is, somebody tells you, predict the number of customer orders you will get from Bangalore next week. and they will give you like all the orders for the last 1 year they have received across all. So then you have to kind of feature engineering, essentially finding out highest correlation variables which help you do the prediction. And then you do training and tuning to get a better answer on top of that. And then you deploy this model. GenAI is slightly different in the fact that in GenAI, you already have a model available to you, right? So you have to first understand how to do prompt engineering to get a good answer from it. All of us must have used ChatGPT. So how do you get a better answer? I'm not getting the answer I want. And then you sometimes improve the model itself, right? So by fine tuning it. I think those are the different steps, and the model, how you, in the reason of fine tuning, or the method of fine tuning LLMs or other generative AI models is different, because typically they tend to be much larger than the models which were being built in the past in ML. And why are these models much larger? These models are much larger simply because they're what we call multimodal or multi-use. Your earlier people will build one model for translation, one model for classification, one model for summarization. And now that one single model of GPT-4 can do like so many things. It can do maths, it can do a bunch of things, right? And that's exactly where this other problem comes today. There's this whole belief that the world might move again towards smaller models, because the larger models are not perfect don't have a very high accuracy rate in some of the smaller subtasks. Now, the interesting thing is here that the large guys are trying to improve efficiency more and more and more, so that one-stop shop, just users don't have to worry about it. And that actually, in a way, simplifies adoption of generative AI. Because now, if out of the box tool which is available can do 10,000 things, then I don't need to worry about too much, right? So a good example of that would be, WordPress. You want to start a blog, and you can just go and sign up at WordPress.com, start off with a trial version. It's completely style of the free version. It's completely hosted to a certain extent of content. Everything is available. Or if you're very technical and you want to make sure, hey, it has to be hosted inside. I think there's a question. Yeah, oh yeah, please feel free to ask questions throughout.
Yeah. So the problem I feel is that it is not really out of the box, right? Because simple things like addition, subtraction, and just conversion of INR to, let's say, USD to INR is not that straightforward. Day before yesterday, I was trying to do some guesstimate using GPT, but the answer was up by a factor of 10, right? The market estimation was given as 500 billion. When I did it manually, because I couldn't believe my eyes, it's just 50 billion, right? So these simple things are not that straightforward actually for GPT, because it is.
So Atul, I think that's a good point. I think. So is there a question there?
Yeah. So when you're saying it is right out of the box, that is, I don't think that is actually the case, right? There's a lot of
No, I didn't say they are
qualitative aspects are there.
I think what I said was the large companies are trying to build everything out of the box as smart as possible. Today, they are not there yet, right? So maths, of course, is a weak point with GPT, but the OpenAI knows that, and they are trying to improve upon it. So fundamentally, people are trying to move towards a model where it will do everything, right? And that's why this whole discussion around AGI starts coming into picture, all of that, right? So, but I think we are moving towards a model where a single model can do multiple things. And that, again, that's what I'm trying to say, that there is this push and pull between, should I just use OpenAI? Should I use like 3 other models? For example, OpenAI has done DALL-E, and DALL-E is obviously not the best model for image generation, right? And you can argue, is Stable Diffusion the right model, or is Midjourney the right model? And so we are getting into that semantics. But essentially, the idea is most foundational models, the way researchers are doing, the AI builders are trying to build, is try to do as many tasks as possible, right? And of course, they are trying to build hooks so it's a tool. So you have to understand this is essentially a tool, what this tool can do today, and how to use it effectively, right? So, yeah. Okay, so, and now I put this quote here because all of us typically know AI only through LLMs. ChatGPT has taken over. We are a lot biased. Everything comes to us as what we see with ChatGPT exactly is how everything else works. I'm sure here everybody has heard about attention is all you need, the Vaswani paper, but the world is not necessarily everywhere still about decoder encoder models. There is CNN still exists. There are a lot of other things, right? So just like all web pages are created equal is not true. Similarly, all models, all AI stacks are not created true. So if you start going and digging deeper, how is a LLM GenAI stack versus how is the image GenAI stack, how is the speech GenAI stack, or the video they are very different, right? Each of them are different. Each of them have their own semantics, right? You don't worry about whether when you are using ChatGPT, you don't care if the person's hand has 5 fingers or 6 fingers or not, right? But that's when you care, when you have generating an image out of it. Generative AI and image generative AI is different, right? So LLM images work on latent diffusion, very different from what LLMs are, right? So LLMs are predictors, and image models are not, right? They are actually creators or denoisers, to be specific, right? So it's a very different. So, and I that's why I just wanted to give you just perspective that I can't explain everything to you. You'll have to research. I'm also trying to research. I am specifically very interested in speech Gen AI. I think it has a lot of implications for us and globally. So it's for me, it's a very active area of trying to understand it. But so within all of these stacks, the one stack we can pick and dig deeper, and please feel free to ask questions, is the LLM AI stack. Now, the way to understand this is at the bottom, you have all the chips, NVIDIA chips. Model Hubs is basically Hugging Face. If you guys haven't seen Hugging Face, please go and check out Hugging Face, where Hugging Face is like github.com, where various AI researchers come, put up their models so others can use it, give feedback, and then take that model, make their own, and again build it further, right? So you can try a lot of models. You can see all, actually it's an amazing place to see all sorts of diversity which is happening there. And then of course you have the cloud providers. So you have OpenAI, you have Azure, you have AWS, you have Google, and then now you're starting to get serverless Gen AI providers. In India itself, there is Infoless, there's a bunch of them. In US, there's Lambda Labs, there's Banana Dev, a bunch of others, right? Now, that's the kind of ops layer. That's where you start using, allows you to use these models. But what model to use, right? So you can have... Yes, Arushi? So, so there is proprietary models, which is essentially your GPT or Cohere or Cloud from Anthropic, and these are available through APIs from the providers. I think the only unique case is GPT, which is available through Azure OpenAI. Maybe I don't know if Cohere is also partnered with AWS or not, but Bedrock from Amazon is starting to partner with some of these models. I think the very exciting thing is the open source models, right? And I believe that Facebook or Meta was let into this by accident. So they had actually a model inside built for researchers called Llama, which got leaked, and then it just cooked up such a storm. It became so popular that Llama 2 has become very popular. And I know there's a lot of stuff which you will keep on hearing. If you are starting off on this journey, I would say just spend a lot of time reading about GPT-4 and Llama 2, and that's a good place to start off for most of you, right? And then you have obviously your own, very own models or other vendor models, which people can get. People are, it's very interesting, even from the Indian Bangalore crowd, on Chennai crowd, we're starting to see fine-tuned models around code generation, SQL. In fact, a lot of startups are fine-tuning their own things. Just pre-training a model takes a lot of money, right? So that you won't see. I don't expect to see that in India anytime soon, that easily, right? Hopefully, AI for Bharat, the investments which have been made, hopefully we'll see something out of it. But generally, it's very expensive. So you won't see that very often. But I think fine-tuning, you will see a lot, right? So people just take Llama 2, quantize it, and start doing things. So you have all of that. So you deploy those in models, you monitor those models. So the models are there. Now, to take value out of these models, you need to use LLM programming frameworks, right? So much like you're coding in Python and all of that, you're coding the same languages, but to call the model, to pass information to it, to pass inputs to it, to get it back. If you want to do things like retrieval augmentation, which is essentially calling a database, using the embeddings, pulling out similar documents and the like. You need some sort of a glue to make it easier. You can obviously write everything yourself, but just makes it easier if somebody else has programmed all the steps so that you can write it more concisely. And this is where you have Llama Index and LangChain have become quite popular in that particular domain. And there again, you can have a lot of questions. So when I talk to a lot of startups, people start off using LangChain. It's actually amazing tool to use. I started using it myself. But if you look at, for example, GPT for documentation, you will see they have written everything without using LangChain. So you don't need it really, how to use GPT-4 without LangChain. But LangChain comes with some sort of a nice set of libraries and nice set of toolkits to do stuff. And then you have things like security, data governance as well, which you want to have at the base layer, so that, and then to get output out or to pass, you need to have some sort of prompt engineering, right? So you want to know, okay, how to ask the right question. I'm using a Llama 2, and then there are some nuances to it. For example, Llama 2, the way they have been instruction tuned it's a little bit of a jargon. You have to ask questions, you have to frame the questions to it in a certain way. And if you don't frame the question to it in a certain way, then the answer you will get might be garbage, or might not be very accurate, or might be low quality. So prompt engineering is essentially trying to understand how to ask the same question. When you use a calculator, you know how to put brackets and stuff like that. If you don't put the bracket the right place, if you don't follow the rules, unfortunately, LLMs are mostly black boxes. So they don't come with instruction manuals. They come with approximate instruction manuals by most providers. And if you can understand how the data was passed to them, that is probably the closest you can get to understand how prompts should be constructed. But people are hacking, when you say, hey, explain to me like a 5-year-old, right? It's like the LLM does not have a brain really, right? So it doesn't, right? So it is actually a stochastic model. So it's trying to figure out probabilities and says, okay. So it's very interesting to see prompt engineering is essentially, you can call it black art, or you can call it reverse engineering what we have created. And this actually leads also to this other thing of explainability of AI. Why was this answer given, not something else? And that's a very hot area of research going on. The second part, sorry, somebody had a question?
No, so yeah, actually, I had a question. So when you talk about prompt engineering, do you think in the longer term that would be a valuable skill? Because as they, mature, the level of prompting required will be easier, right? So let's say, for example, you say, what is the Bangalore weather today? As again, let's say Bangalore weather. Then these two are different questions, but essentially the model would be smart enough, is my opinion, going forward, right? So prompt engineering as a skill would be redundant, let's say in a year's time, or 1.5, 2 years time.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, to give you a very simple example, let's say I strongly believe if GPT-4 was actually trained and it could be prompted in Hindi, just like pure Hindi, the answers will be much higher quality. Because Hindi by definition is slightly unambiguous, right? Or the way it is constructed. So prompts are actually, a lot of the hallucinations, or sometimes it happens just simply because the question is quite ambiguous. English language is a little ambiguous, right? But yes, you're right. I think quality of LLMs will improve significantly. So two things are going to happen. Prompt engineering should go down to some extent, but there is always a case for if that is the only way to ask a question, and you're asking a system which is probabilistic and not a deterministic system, then you might find a better way to ask that question, right? Like in a class, when all of us in a school, there were some people who were very articulate and asked very nice questions, and you would think, oh, I should have asked it that way, right? So I think there will be always some scope. The difference between a not so great question and a great question will reduce, but it will always be there. Whether we as VCs can go and invest on that delta, that I am unsure of. I don't think that delta will provide us arbitrage opportunities to invest in that, right? Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of tools around this now, right? So what has happened is people today experiment with prompts, and then they realize that, oh, I need to keep a copy of the best prompt. So that just leads to, control versioning of the prompts and those kind of things. And sometimes, in fact, now people have taken it to the next level where you can do a prompt caching. So if somebody asks LLM, calling an LLM and answering that prompt is very expensive. So I think Portkey does this, where Portkey provides prompt caching, which is a light speed investment, where you can essentially, if a question of a prompt has been asked, simply if a prompt has been asked before, then you can just retrieve the answer yourself. You don't need which LLM answered previously. You don't need to change the answer. So why go through an expensive process?
There are prompt optimizer plugins also, I think now. That was what I was reading, I was experimenting with. There are plugins on GPT Plus.
Yeah, 100%. So I think if you look at GPT-4, so OpenAI just announced that GPT 3.5 can be fine-tuned now. And one of the big things they said you could do now is, by fine-tuning, you can reduce the prompt length, right? Because fundamentally prompt length costs money, right? So if you can create a better prompt, then you don't need to spend that money. It was operational cost every time. It's a marginal cost every time you do it. You have to, right? So that is so this is an LLM AI stack, by the way, right? And similarly, if you go start digging into image AI stack, you will find things. And I have missed out a lot of pieces here, by the for example, you need to remove bias, you need to remove toxicity, you need to make sure that the answer does not have any PAIs or data privacy. All of those elements come in, and there are companies which have been funded and have been created around it, I think, but the problems have not been solved today to like a 80-90% resolution, right? So guardrails.io, for example, again, Indian founder has gone and built this company out, very popular in the Valley. Actually, I might do a session with her. Or for example, doing, okay, how do I write testing for LLM apps? Like, how do I know that because one of the big elements of software quality is testing, right? So how do I test automation? And for that, you have to have LLM evaluation, answer evaluation, right? So today night, just after this webinar, there's another webinar which I'm doing, which is the TrueLens team, and they do LLM apps evaluation. They built a framework for that, and Langsmith from LangChain provides some sort of a debugging ability for some of that, right? And I'm not even talking about agents here. I think that whole ecosystem is very interesting, but fairly early. But it just tells you that there are a lot of moving pieces, and each of these moving pieces essentially is an opportunity for us as VCs to invest, right? If somebody creates a very nice small thing, which fits very nicely within this, so it's actually you could spend hours and hours and like maybe a couple of years in just investing in this space. If this space is here to stay, let me qualify with that. And then you multiply this all with the 4 or 5 different GenAI stacks, which we are talking. And I'm not even going to, because of the GenAI research, you are having so much research in AI ML itself, that tomorrow, if you understand this well, you might be able to go and do all the other investments, all the other spaces also. All right. So it's a nice setup, essentially. Yeah. So any other questions on this? Sorry, I have not put names. You can find a lot of these online.
So Prayank, just a quick question here that we've gotten.
Yeah.
So now everybody said that, I mean, there's a common knowledge that productionizing AI has always been sort of difficult. You can always build these side projects or whatever, but then sort of moving that to scale and getting millions of users to use it has like always sort of been a big challenge, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we've also already seen a lot of these ML ops companies coming up, right? Helping you get to this production grade usage very, very quickly.
Right.
Now, that space, it looks like it's already very quickly broken down into like different layers of abstraction, right? Like some folks are like going obviously all the way down to the hardware itself, and some are going slightly higher and higher. So how do you sort of look at that happening today? Like what sort of how do end customers think about this? What are the different pieces of interesting companies that you're sort of seeing today?
See, I'll tell you, right? So for example, for my companies, I say, hey, you want to embark on your AI journey, don't get confused by other jargon which is out there. If you're doing something which is only in text, just start and do all your experiments with the GPT API, right? Just do it, right? So OpenAI has providing an API. You don't have to think about any of these things, right? You don't have to think about deployment, optimizing, monitoring. So basically, you already had a stack. So let's go back to the original. So if a company had this stack already, which is a regular stack, the only thing they are doing now is just calling another API. That's it, right? So you don't change any of your stack today right now. If you're just doing simple prompting and expecting an answer. And then the only thing you want to worry about sometimes, then you're solving for latency issues with GPT-4 because they don't necessarily respond back in a deterministic, they don't have a SLA for it. So then people shift from this to Azure OpenAI, because Azure OpenAI, you get some sort of SLAs, they have certain things which you respond, right? From there, you move to, okay, I have this, now I want to access, so more sophisticated use case, okay, retrieval augmentation system. So I need to use some sort of a vector database, and then you can, so I think it starts to build up. Now, to your point, I think we will have a whole, like I gave the example of WordPress.com. You can download WordPress from the website of theirs and self-host it, or you can go to some other company which will provide you hosted, WordPress. I think that optionality is always going to be there. We as VCs have to figure out where is it that it makes more sense. So, for example, a lot of us have invested in no-code tools or low-code tools or pro-code tools, right? All of them exist. So there is always going to be a spectrum of customer who's going to need something. I think, so let me put it this way, right? So if the large number of customers want to access something and they don't have technical knowledge and they find it very expensive to work with the agency, then obviously you can do a low code or no code solution, right? So all of those, I think it's very specific to the opportunity. And at that point in time, what makes sense, right? So if you're going to, and also how you look at the company, right? So the company comes to you and says, hey, I'm only going to work with enterprises. And then they say, I am only going to call GPT-4 AI APIs. Then you will say, hey, I don't know whether this is going to make sense. You need to own SLAs to your enterprise customers. So you need to self-host it. You need to have monitoring, optimization, data security. A lot of things come into picture. So you better have it on your own end. But if somebody comes and says, hey, I'm providing, and this is very common in India now, which is I'm providing marketing, GenAI marketing products for SMBs in the US, which are on PLG motion. That customer doesn't care whether you have self-hosted it or not, right? So I think it's very dependent on the company and problem you're looking at. So this is something which is just out there as data. You guys can look at it. So this is an example of closed source models, open source models. And I think, by the way, this is a very important paradigm. The open source part of AI is very, very important, right? This is where the diversity will start to come in, right? So almost any Indian company you speak to, for example, in speech synthesis, today uses 11 labs, and they use DeepGram. These are the two most common standardized tools across, right? And you have some sort of a available open source version for these. So today, if some smart person picks up this particular open source tool, they can actually try and they get a running start and they can try to compete with 11 labs. And I could potentially bet on that, right? They have to be smart. They have to understand why or why not. I'll give you some examples. For example, 11 labs, very popular. I think they just launched their new product 2-3 days ago. I think it is, if I'm not wrong, and I might be, they support 20-30 languages. And you could just go after all the other languages which they don't support. So spaces can become popular, available like that. But yeah, this is just a data set, right? Okay, interesting question, right? So is it worthwhile to invest in this space? And the space, just so you know, is the GenAI tech stack, right? The way I think about this is specifically pertaining to this is in my mind is like another development tool or developer tool kind of space. And we all have seen this story we have been seeing this story for the last like 20 odd years, or at least 10 odd years in the Indian ecosystem. So many dev tools companies are there globally and all that, right? So I think it's just the same. It's not very different, right? And yeah, I'll just skip some of this. Yeah, I think, yeah. So fundamentally, do developer companies make money, right? And they do. The whole objective of the slide is this. So this is a very nice I should thank this person, Tyrell. They essentially keep kind of a track of this. This might not be super accurate, but kind of directionally tells you. So he's tracking a bunch of companies, and you can see 64 billion ARR across all these DevStack categories and companies, which he's tracking, like some 1,500 odd companies in 2023. And then you can see that within this, a lot of it is concentrated on developer platforms, right? So 42 out of 43 billion. So that's significant. And also these categories are super competitive, right? Now, but what it tells you is all of this stack, if GenAI is here to stay, will be all sorts of tools will be recreated in a very similar way, because you're essentially programming, right? You're not changing, but right. It leads to two questions. One, all of this stack is required, or at least support for that stack is required in the existing tools in this particular space. So can they drive net new delta ARR on top of this, right? And that is a big question, right? So will the incumbents take that ARR, or will the new startups be able to build products to be used for this, right? So and prompt management is a good example of that. You had GitHub, and now you have for code management, for Git for code management, and then prompt management it can work with prompt management, but prompt management doesn't yield nicely to it, right? So you want some sort of specialized product for it. And most probably prompt management tool will not be used by a technical developer. It is going to be used by a prompt engineer who knows how to write good English. So you might not want to make it very technical. So so when you start looking at each of these, segments, there are ways you can go and dig in and say, hey, will some company be created out of here or not? Does it make sense? Right. So I think that's the other way. But the broader message is, if you believe the GenAI stack works, then there's a potential opportunity that these dollars are available in a net new use case, and we can go and invest in those, right? And this is the opportunity for founders, and that's what you see, that founders are creating solutions for these, right? And then the history is that we are moving towards more and more sophisticated technology, right? So what you see today of GenAI and what you will see 1 year later, is like iPhone 3 versus iPhone 14, or I'm not a fan of iPhone, but let's say Android 1 versus whatever the latest version of Android is, just a lot more sophisticated. And when things become more sophisticated, you want more sophisticated patterns. There are going to be more and more things, so the next 10 years, you will find a lot more interesting things happening. And then that's essentially allows us to, again, have a surface area of interesting problems to be solved, both by entrepreneurs as well as areas of opportunity for investors to invest in. Essentially, I think this is something which Hemant was alluding to in his CapEx and cycles and stuff like that, right? And yeah, so I think it's pretty much that, right? So, but the question is, is this worthwhile to invest in this space today, right? You don't want to be investing in this way. Okay, karna hai, like I'll have more white hair on my head. I need to make a decision today whether I should invest in this space or not. And I think this is actually a very rhetorical question. So I'll just observe this graph for like 30 seconds and figure out what is odd in this graph. And this is, by the way, from Kathy Woods, the ARC investment management team. They're very popular, right? Anybody wants to take a shot at this? Okay, I'll point out. So they tell us that today the 2021 enterprise software spend is 1 trillion. Okay, and we're sitting in 2023. You know what's happening around us. In let's say, okay, taking the graph, in 9 years, only spend on AI software is going to be 14 trillion. This is like black magic, right? So it's like insane amount of that's just, and obviously the best part is that everything you can do on Wall Street, you can just say forecast, and inherently there is some problem, right? I think this is too much. I think this is too much of a hard sell. This is more of selling their own product, right? But I think the big thing is there is a lot of hope, And what is that hope is, let's assume today, I showed you one number, which was 63 billion, which was not either 1 trillion or which was not 14 trillion. It is a much smaller number. But let's assume 10% of that, of the 10% of AI use, 10% of programming stack resources will go towards AI. Today, let's say, it's 0% of, or maybe 1% or 2% of softwares use AI today, and it will go to 10%, 20%. Then you can put that maths. Okay, net new $10 billion, $20 billion of ARR is available over the next few years. So that's like a high level math. So it might be interesting, very high level, right? Obviously, I think it's going to be much bigger, but I think this is a bit of this slide is a bit of an overkill that, it's going to increase manifold. I think that's a little bit of maybe it will, I don't know, but it's like saying AI will unlock and everybody will start using software everywhere. And like, that spend is humongous.
And what does this 56 trillion means? Like, this will be the saving on the labor.
It's basically saying AI will increase the output so much. So it's saying if you spend 14 trillion on AI, you will
Then
get
you would
a
say
bump up of
56 trillion of labor spend will be saved, right? Technically speaking.
No, it's not labor spend. It's like, it's called productivity gain. Now it can be in terms of higher output or lower costs, both, right? So,
Okay.
So in this particular case, they specifically said output increase. So it's not cost saving. They are saying people will produce 4 times more, or not 4 times. They will. I don't know how they came up with this, by the way, right? So that's 56 trillions. They're like, I don't think the global economy is that big.
So by 2030, by 2030.
Maybe, right? So then the entire global economy is saved by so I don't know. Like I'm like, can somebody look up and tell us like how big is the global economy today, like in terms of trillions of dollars? Like I don't know actually. Should be like, I think should be like 30 trillion, maybe, I think.
105 trillion.
Sorry?
105 trillion is what Google is.
105 trillion. Okay. Yeah. So wow, that's like a massive saving or massive increase, right? So 50% increase in the world economy. That's like, okay, I don't know. So maybe they're right. I'm not a macroeconomic guy, so I have no idea. Right. So now the challenge for us. So basically, should you invest? I think broadly, the argument I'm making is that there is enough ARR available, TAM available for us to invest. Whether we can get it or not is a different question, but money is going to get created, right? So now the cons are it's too rapidly changing environment. There's just so much noise. For every product, people are coming and saying, hey, I am the better solution. So there's no clear winner today because everybody's learning, there's no established paradigm, right? These are the cons. And the pros are amazing, right? The same things are the pros. For VCs, we have to take the bet. Essentially, we have to say, hey, it's the right environment for me to go and invest. Because there's so much noise, and the company I'm going to invest and bet on this is the thing where they can go and win, right? So actually, it's perfect. So then you can take your pick. Are you investing in FOMO, or because I don't understand, or are you investing because you really go in? So I think that's and this is the typical VC slide, right? So you invest because of FOMO, or you invest in spite of FOMO, or whatever, right? So anyway, so this is hopefully this is the operational stuff. Like, this is what I think when I discuss inside my firm. Obviously, most of the team is smarter than me, but at the end of the day, all VCs are known by the choice they finally decide to make, and nobody knows your moment of weakness. Why did you invest? You were very happy that day, or you were in a hurry to go home, or whatever, right? At the end of the day, whatever we do, we will be known 5 to 6 years out from the companies we invest in, right? But what are the ground truths when you're investing today, right? So and this is what or at least I try to practice when I do investments. It's very difficult I'm not a super techie in GenAI data scientist. I understand a little bit, right? So how do I know like this is the place to invest, right? So just talk to customers, right? Obviously, founders are very technical. They will come, they will talk, they will say a bunch of things which we might not understand. Sometimes I nod my head so that they don't think I'm dumb, but it's kind of, at the end of the day, the best things which I have found is just make them meet customers, and I think they appreciate, and the founders appreciate it, right? So you introduce them to customers, and I position it to them like, hey, I don't understand. I understand 10% of what you're saying. Let me introduce you to a head of data science, or a data scientist, or a AI engineer, or whoever, and let's just have a call with them, and I'll be listening in, and I'll see and I'll take their feedback. If they like your product, you'll get a customer at the end of the day. If they don't like your product, hopefully you'll get some good insights from them, and I think the good founders are open for it, and I think it makes a very interesting conversation. I think it's a little hard because you're asking time from our contacts, and how much time you can ask. So you have to be very nuanced about who you take. So you need to form some sort of judgment. You can't do it for everybody. But yeah, I think this is the best way to do it. It benefits us as VCs. It benefits the founder with respect to finding customers or insights, and it benefits hopefully potential customer also. I think the person who's being asked a lot of the questions, the buyer, is the one who's spending most of his precious time. But if you can find those, that'll be great. Second, this is something I learned. A lot of startups I was talking to, unfortunately in India, it's most of the people are just still scratching the surface. They don't. The answers from most of the folks are not very deep. ML, yes, but not necessarily for GenAI. People haven't seen. There's not enough diffusion of knowledge of understanding of GenAI, use cases of GenAI. They haven't seen their computers using GenAI, so they have not experimented with it. So people are sitting on sidelines. So what we realized was the answers we were getting from folks in the Indian tech industry versus the answers we were getting from international users were very different. And so I would request all of you to actually try to take your companies which you're evaluating and have answers from international customers as well. That is very important. And then go to a variety of customer segments, right? So you need to understand not every company. So for example, Vaishak asked this question, right? What about hosted ML models or self-hosted ML models on cloud providers, hosted ML model providers, model hubs, right? Like just this, right? So everybody has a different use case. Some is the SMB, some is the enterprise. So you have to find, you as the VC will have, obviously startups say, I will build for everybody. Most of the startups say like that. Very few startups I've met say, this is my ICP, I'm only building for this. So we as VCs have to put on our judgment hat and say, who is the right ICP for this startup? And for them, we have to go, and that's the guy you have to pick, right?
One question I have here is, so when you're following these ground truths, let's say there's an Indian founder who is building a GenAI space, and there's a US founder who's building, right? But a lot of Indian founders want to sell there.
Yeah.
Now, VCs have to judge whether this guy will be able to sell there or not.
Yeah.
But there are two fundamental questions here. One, in most cases, the US founder has a better access to these markets.
Correct.
He'll be better able to sell, right? And secondly, if he has some sort of pedigree from there, even if let's say the founder or not, then how do we make a case for the Indian company to be there, right? Do we look at it will grab a smaller share of the market and hence we should invest, or we should totally not invest? What is your perspective on that?
I think I come from a large fund, right? So I mean, I can't invest in something which is trying to get a smaller share of the market. I think the way we look at it is, what is the fire in the founder? What is the ambition and learnability, right? So we meet founders of all sorts, founders who have worked in the US, who already have a network in the US. It becomes easier. They know the people, they have demonstrated that they can go and do, right? So that's easy. Founders who are, let's say, just out of college, very smart, have never worked outside of US. Basically, that's also very easy. Like, you basically tell them, hey, you take my money and then go and sell in the US. We as VCs have to take that risk. If we don't, then who will take that risk, right? You will typically not get a paki pakai kheer nahi milegi, right? So you have to take that effort and putting money where you and helping founders reduce that risk from their startup. So yeah, so I think there are some founders like, okay, why are you doing this in India, right? Oh, I'm building this first time, so I just wanted to talk to Indian customers. Why are you not going to US right now? Because we are not ready, right? There I go and tell them, hey, if you're not ready now, and 1 year later you build it for Indian customers, you will not be ready even then, because the US guys will come with a different set of, you'll have to learn how to sell there, you'll have to learn how to talk there. Your product might be good, but it might not pick up. So why not just go and spend time there? I think the catch there is, it is easy to say that for funded companies. For unfunded companies which are meeting for seed stage, I think it's hard because founders running from their own. So there they have to find some sort of other hack. Open source or is a great place to start. Community, like they can go and say, hey, I'm plugged into 5 or 6 different communities and I got these kind of customers. But they, at least the free stuff, or at least the Discord communities, they should be going in and talking to, right? Like who's stopping them from doing that? So I think that kind of hustle they have to show them, because you're right. The dice is loaded against the Indian software founder sitting in, let's say Kochi, and trying to build it and try to sell it. Like he has to go and talk to the customer first. So
Prayank, so just a quick follow-up to that, right? Does it hurt a lot that we're not really close to the research ecosystems in ML and AI in specific? Because most of the founders here, I mean, they might have spent some time in the US, but like, I mean, again, back to his point, right, competing with US companies, they also have that added advantage of, for example, just being in the valley.
no, I don't. So Vishak, I'll qualify that with the fact that we are not talking about the users or the builders. We're talking about the middleware. So the middleware is essentially a tool. They don't have to know too much about what's happening in the research, right? Yes, it would be good if they do, but they don't necessarily need to, right? So you could build out something over a period of time. I'll give you one example, right? So take Browser Stack, or take Postman, or take Hasura, right? They came after, like, so Browser Stack doesn't need to be close to the Android team at that point of time when they started. They spotted the problem much early on, that this is a CapEx problem, and I can provide a tooling for it to make it faster and easier to use. And then you can go and build it. And then over a period of time, when they get to scale, yes, then they can say, hey, you're already partnered with Google, so the latest upcoming Android stuff is already loaded. You can from day one start on using it. But it's not like requirement, right? Or Postman never needed to do all, like, distribution happened just because through their Google Chrome plugin, right? I think there are many patterns in which you can go to do GTM and win. And being research is useful, but not necessarily. By the way, at least my take is, what I've seen is a lot of the research guys today are also very interested to find interesting companies partnering, right? So if Indian founder is doing something interesting, they will be able to get access to OpenAI. They will come. Like, you do something interesting, you talk about it, everybody's talking about it, they will find you and talk to you. Yes, there's a lot of noise. I think a good example of that is Taranjeet. I think Taranjeet from Chain, I forget the name of this company. He was doing something interesting on open source. People found him, and then he got invited to a bunch of people in the valley. And when he met, like, people would know him already, right? So I think that's for sure, right? But yes, I mean, the majority of what I'm trying to say, customers are in the valley, so you'll have to go there, right? So I think that's people have to put that effort, or at least they've shown enough research to this speaking to the right pertinent. And I think from the VC perspective, the last point is for the VCs, right? So it applies to us as well. The hustle of a VC to do better investments, we can't leave the onus of explaining everything to the founders. We as VCs have to learn a lot of these things, right? And it's not everybody's passionate about it. I don't understand, for example, D2C brands as well. I don't understand a bunch of things which consumer stuff as well, right? If it is my job, if I'm supposed to make money on it, I better know how to do it, right? So I think that's very imperative for all of us. And then there is so much resource available today, right? So what you can do is you can simplify it by talking to some friends. Essentially, what are the best steps to start off? Like I told you, start off by just reading through all the GPT documentation. That just get you started on a bunch of things, right? Stuff like that, right? And then if you are really cutting edge, I love to spend time on Archive. Archive is where research papers get published. It's quite interesting. Like, I'll give you an example. So Facebook came out with this Meta came out with this computer vision model called Segment Anything. And then some Chinese researchers, I believe, they came out with food anything or food segment. So you would give it food images and they will classify all the food images, right? Now those kind of cutting edge stuff happens on archive and it's very interesting to read. And then this comes into production, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year later. So it tells as a VC gives you ideas what is coming, right? It is already a little bit old sometimes because those guys might start off a company, but at least now you're still much more closer to the research, right? So and I think GenAI is definitely a space where it is evolving so fast, research is happening so fast, things are changing so fast that you want to be closer to the research versus, let's say, an application SaaS company because they are just building on what has been happening in the industry for many, many years. Right? Sorry, I just realized that time is very short. I've overshot. And we are on 36 out of 63 slides. So, okay. So one last rule is essentially amazing team. All of this can go down the drain. Like yesterday, I met a team from Bits Pilani, amazing folks. I felt they massive hustle, young guys, they could do something. They were already thinking of too many use cases, thoughtfulness, felt like they will go whatever it takes to find and build a big company, right? Those kind of people you want to bet on, even if they don't have scientific knowledge, even if they don't because that is gumption, right? That is, hey, I'll just do whatever it takes, right? Okay, let me see. Okay, we'll probably do how much are people going to stick around, or how much is sorry, I've just overshot it massively. Okay, so I'll try to wrap up in next 5 minutes.
Perfect.
Right. So essentially, how do you invest? You first define the customer need. Why do customers need this product? Go and talk. Why will customers continue to stick to this product? Right? How easy it is for somebody to come in and replace this product? I think just very simple. TAM, we already decided, and at any point of this is like if a startup fails at any point, you can just stop there, right? Essentially, right? So. What is it? I think the hardest one is basically this, which is technical. Why is this technical approach of this product superior to others? I think that's the hard one, right? Because we don't know, you don't know, it's a new space. So I think there you have to take sometimes it's a coin toss, sometimes you can take an informed guess, sometimes you can actually get smart people to tell you, okay, this is the right thing, right? But it will fall into one of those three, right? I think this is self-explanatory. Okay, this is more case studies. Let me take all right, so this is probably an easy one. So there are a bunch of case studies you guys can read through. So this is speech synthesis, and let's say these 3 startups came to you today and basically said, these were, let's say, all startups, and said, hey, give me money. So you have Whisper, you have 11 Labs, you have AI for Bharat. These are actual real life products you can go and see in the market. You can try to understand what they do. Now, how do you decide as a VC where to invest, right? And let's say the TAM checks out, yes, all of that. So essentially now it's the core product on which you have to decide. TAM checks out, team checks out, technology is fine, all of that is fine, right? But then even technology, there should be some sort of differences. Otherwise, it's exactly like to like. Then you're just investing on who can get better distribution or fund or storytelling. But since this is a technical product and this is speech synthesis, first, obviously in speech comes out to be accuracy. Okay, let's say my thesis is that a company which will become very big will be very good in Hindi synthesis. So then how accurate is Whisper versus 11 Labs versus AI for Bharat? Then obviously from a customer perspective, what is the pricing? Who's able to produce cheaper, but with margins, right? So it should not be just for the pricing for the sake of cap, right? Are they supporting you Hindi also or not, right? Customization is, let's say, how much levers they provide the user to give, and this is where now you have to have a view on the ICP also. If it is going to be used by a small business, then you just want a very simple interface. If you want it to be for enterprise, they will want many more levers, right? Streaming versus non-streaming is very specific to this, which is, let's say, a typical use case is you want an AI call center. Somebody picks up the phone and you start talking to that agent. The agent is an AI agent. The answer should be coming back very fast, right? Because it takes time to process. So it should be streaming. It should not be like, okay, I ask a question and it says, okay, wait for 30 seconds for me to do my inference, compute my AI response, and then come back to you. And then latency, right? So even if the inference is fast, sometimes their models or deployment are not good, that it takes them a lot of time to come back with answer, right? So just model was produced in Bombay, and then I'm sitting in Delhi, and 2 seconds of latency got added just because it was that, right? So you have to figure out all those sorts of things, and the founder should be able to answer those kind of questions. And this is where how much research you have done, let's say by the second or third meeting on this use case, that you should be able to ask these questions. And or you should be able to say the founder already told me all of this in the first meeting, and then I was able to think through a lot of that, right? I think that's where it is important. We can read all of this. One other question is, how will LangChain make money? It's open source project, everybody uses it, blah blah. And we have been here before, right? So Postman was free for the longest period of time. They make money. Postman, even today, I use on my laptop. It's free, right? I don't pay them any money. MongoDB, Elastic, Confluent, all of these were and are open source projects, and they have a paid version now. They have proven their technical superiority, right? So LangChain is just an example of an open source project in AI, but you can. Vercel is interesting. Vercel is not open source, but Vercel is built on everything which is open source, right? So that is another paradigm which can be used, right? So yeah, and then this is a homework. In this particular case, all these companies are the same. They're all serverless computing guys, serverless GPUs. Please go and think why or how. If you're given a choice, how do you invest, right? I learned that the best way to learn how to do investing is by creating choices. So you can have a choice matrix. When you start thinking in, abstract, कि ये भी हो जाएगा, वो हो जाएगा, then you have to make prioritization and choice. That's the best way to learn. All right. Okay. Predicting the future. One more minute. So iPhone versus Android. That's how I see the entire ecosystem developing. So you have GPT, which is best in class, high end, expensive to use, Cohere, expensive, all of those, right? So they are closed source, and you have this Android kind of llama. And as you can see, iPhone has its own ecosystem. Large companies have been created around it, and it is here to stay. Similarly, Android is also massive and here to stay. That is one construct. Data is the most important thing as in the entire ecosystem. So without data, you're just another person, with an opinion, right? So how companies will differentiate, especially in the AI users landscape, is who has what kind of data. So, and as you can already see, Twitter and Reddit, all of these guys are now behind paywalls or rate limiting because of this. In the new age of LLMs, in the new age of GenAI, data is super important. Privacy is power. We are looking at regulations a lot, and already this has happened in the past, so it's bound to repeat everywhere. India itself is getting our own bill. I'm pretty sure in some time LLMs and other, let's say you fine tune a model with customer information and you had PII data inside it. Now, the problem could be that how do I remove that customer information from the LLM model? And it's a big problem. How do you figure it out? Like, you already trained the neural network, right? So there are things which like that. If you're not paying for the product, you are the product. GenAI is very costly. It brings down the margins of SaaS companies, right? Majority of revenue in internet today is using ads. Now GenAI is essentially chat. So how will you marry customer experience without ad revenue? Who has to pay for it? Like, not every customer is going to pay you $5 for something, right? So how are you going to get it? Like, if everything is going to move away from, people are saying we've stopped opening Google and now moving to just using ChatGPT for doing search. So should ChatGPT start showing ads? But that would completely be bad on the user experience. So I think it's interesting. AI on the edge. These models are very large. We are, I think, still far away from a talking refrigerator, but it is possible as compute increases on the end. But as compute increases, large models increase. Then you don't want a power-hungry refrigerator in your or AC in your house. So there has to be a balance. But AI on the edge is big and huge. It's going to happen in the next. We are right now doing AI through laptops and through Colab notebooks and whatever. I think it's going to happen, right? So this is a prominent area which we all should think about. AI explainability, right? So how do you explain? Sorry, the headline is wrong. The description is wrong, but how do you explain an answer, right? People are talking about using AI in lending. Now, for some reason, there is some bias. How will you explain it? In a typical ML model, you can go back and look at the data and explain it. But in a pre-trained model, when you are using somebody else's software, even if you fine-tune it, bias could still exist. How will you do that? AGI, this is a hot topic. Will AI kill us or not? All of that, no debate here. And then I think open source will just lead to a lot of innovation. So I think we are scratching the surface. Even though I said it, I'm just repeating it here. We don't even know where people are going to go with this. Already, I don't know if you guys seen this. Somebody used Llama and trained it on how to do UX testing. So they trained the model how to click and change things on an Android phone, and then that leads to a whole new world of automated UI testing using LLMs can happen, right? So we have to be very creative on this. Yeah, with this, sorry, I think I took more than half an hour extra, but my apologies on that. So sorry about this, guys. Yeah,
No problem.
Thank you so much, Prayank. Really appreciate it.
thanks for all of you who stuck back, who stuck around. So thank you. All right, guys. See you.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Bye.
Prayank.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.